I proposed to the man I had been in an ambiguous relationship with for 10 years. In front of everyone, he threw the ring into the drink. It was all a big joke. Joseph swirled his glass and embraced a young girl, casually telling me not to be silly. Little did he know, that was my last chance. Later, with red eyes, he knelt down on one knee, trembling as he fished out the ring that had been soaked in alcohol, asking me to marry him. Don't be silly. I gently closed the ring, saying softly, I wasn't joking either. At 33, I said I was going to get married, and after hearing this, Kathy replied with 3 question marks. Joseph agreed to marry you? I was planning to propose to him. I checked the time, and there were still 3 hours until the celebration party. So, good luck, then? Kathy's words were full of helplessness. I understood her skepticism, as tonight marked the second time I had officially proposed to Joseph. After graduating from college, I gave up further studies and chose to start a business with him in the initial stages of securing investment, forming a team, pushing deadlines. We worked hard for a whole year, and finally, our company began to make a name for itself in the industry. On the night we received our first $1 million funding, he and I sat on the rooftop of the company, toasting. In a tipsy haze, I tilted my head and listened to him envisioning the future of the company. 5 years, no, just 3 years. He stood up, pointing to a towering building across the street. That's where our company will be. With the night breeze and the moon as witnesses, his eyes were full of light. My heart warmed, and I casually tore off the pull tab from a soda can. Joseph, let's get married when we move in there. He was momentarily stunned, turned around, took my rough ring from me, and reached for the back of my neck. Cicadas chirped on a hot summer night with no breeze. On the cluttered rooftop, we shared our first kiss as he had said. In less than 3 years, we moved into the most luxurious office building in the CBD. On the day of our relocation was also Joseph's birthday. I asked the assistant to take everyone to the restaurant first, and I stayed behind, preparing to propose to him. By this time, he should have just finished an international conference call. The CEO's office was designed as an open space with glass walls, which added difficulty to my proposal plan. Holding sunflowers in my hands, I hid behind the door. A muffled sound caught my attention. The frosted glass beside the door displayed 2 figures entwined and intertwined. The young and pretty secretary was pressed against the glass by a man, their fingers interlocked. Close to each other's ears, they whispered something, and the girl chuckled softly twice, the final note drowned in a kiss. I felt a chill and leaned against the door. The soundproofing was really poor. How long were they going to keep kissing? At the celebration dinner, I got drunk and vaguely saw Joseph leading the blushing secretary in late. She was shyly hiding behind him. Suddenly, my interest waned. He, with a triumphant air, sat nonchalantly beside me. Irene, didn't you prepare a surprise? Where's the gift? His tone was filled with anticipation. If only half an hour ago, I had personally received the surprise he had prepared for me, perhaps by now, he would have stuck to the plan and presented the bouquet with the diamond ring hidden inside. I forgot. I lowered my head and drank. The atmosphere chilled. The smile at the corner of Joseph's lips faded, and he, too, began to pour himself more drinks. As the banquet ended, he said he had called a driver and insisted on sending me back first. As soon as I got in the car, I regretted it. The car was empty, except for the sunflowers I had tossed aside, quietly lying on the back seat. I heard the sound of the door locking behind me. Irene, you've learned to deceive. His voice was hoarse, devoid of any drunkenness. I shrank to one side of the car, brimming with resistance. Did you see it? Joseph's deep voice asked. Though I had the answer in my heart, he forced me to admit it. Let's go back to being business partners. I wish you happiness. As I reached for the door to get out, my elbow was pulled back. I'm sorry, it was just a moment of weakness. He sighed in frustration. Can we? His eyes, hidden in the darkness, were bright and compelling, drawing me in. Give me another chance? I couldn't believe that mouth, which had kissed someone else, so I simply replied, "Let's talk about it later." The rest of the words were drowned in his warm embrace. I closed my eyes, and the scent of a strange perfume drifted from his collar. It was a burning, bright, fruity floral scent. Suddenly, I felt nauseous. I opened the car door from the inside. "Get out." I turned my head away, not wanting to be swayed by that face. "Irene, they don't matter, I only want you." He picked up the bouquet of sunflowers, half kneeling in the cramped car, pleading with me. I lowered my gaze, looking into his clear eyes, feeling utterly exhausted. "I don't want to see you right now. Please, get out of the car." He stood up in silence, thrust the sunflowers into my arms. "Go, don't be angry." The carefully prepared sunflowers, which had endured from day to night, were beginning to wither. Everything I had painstakingly prepared seemed like a joke. I didn't want to see them anymore, so I threw them back at Joseph. The ring flew out, and the sharp edges of the diamond scratched his cheek, drawing blood instantly. Joseph seemed not to feel the pain, picked up the ring and the sunflowers, and silently got out of the car. "Call me when you get home." He clung to the car window, still reluctantly advising me. Without looking back, I rolled up the window and told the chauffeur who had come in, "Drive." The next day, an extremely unequal profit-sharing agreement for Joseph quietly lay on my office desk. I signed it with a smile. Over these years, the company has grown rapidly, with a market valuation of up to $100 billion. Now that he has achieved success and fame, the recent media interviews and videos have stirred up discussions. The owner of this company is so handsome. He's a big shot now, and he's only 33. Only 33, indeed. For him to have a market valuation of $100 billion at such a young age, it's truly remarkable. In the blink of an eye, it's been almost 10 years since the first marriage proposal on the rooftop and the second one ending quietly. The old building where the rooftop was located has long been replaced by a new structure. After that failed proposal, we never mentioned marriage again, maintaining a relationship that fell short of being official. I knew his preferences well, and he controlled my comfort zone. When our feelings were strong, he asked, "What am I to you?" I replied, "What do you think?" He smiled, didn't answer, just hugged me tight. We were like two beasts dependent on each other, licking our wounds in the battlefield of business, sharing the spoils of our hunts. We kissed in front of floor-to-ceiling windows, embraced tightly after signing big contracts, and exchanged blessings at the dawn of the new year. Our relationship only went so far. Over the years, Joseph always portrayed himself publicly as single, seemingly interested in someone, actively pursuing them to avoid the colorful temptations of the market. Everyone in the company knew that the two bosses were ambiguously entwined. Every year, new individuals joined the chase, vying for his attention. At first, I thought they were simply unaware, until one day in the water cooler room, I overheard, "Irene and Joseph? I don't think they have a chance." The crisp female voice responded kindly to her colleague's warning. If they were serious, they wouldn't have waited so many years. Besides, I'm only 24, what's there to be afraid of? It's not like I can't handle it. 24, nearly a decade younger than me. I held the coffee cup, feeling the bitterness before taking a sip. That night was a celebration for the company's new product sales surpassing 10 million, and I invited all our mutual friends and partners. As the evening approached, I became increasingly nervous, going over the plans repeatedly. With my assistant on maternity leave, HR provided a young handsome man, John, to assist me temporarily. Normally composed, he witnessed my anxiety for the first time and couldn't help but speak up, "Irene, you're so great, no one would reject you." Sighing, I replied, "It's not my first proposal." John fell silent for a moment and then added, "If he's blind, or you're blind, let's change it up." His straightforwardness eased my tension. That night, Joseph appeared in a high-end suit, exuding confidence as he engaged with the guests. At 33, he was handsome and mature, with charming eyes. People came and went around him constantly. I held a glass of wine, locking eyes with him from a distance. He frowned slightly at my red dress, remembering his advice to avoid flashy attire in business settings. Tonight was different. I hoped that he would remember me differently, not just as a business partner. As the evening progressed, the event reached its climax, with everyone raising their glasses and toasting to the record-breaking sales of the new product. At my signal, the host began preparing for the next segment, a 60-second moment of heartfelt sincerity. With a theatrical countdown, the lights were dimmed, and everyone was encouraged to hold hands or even kiss their loved ones. The audience was abuzz. You see, the company had a rule against open office relationships. You could date, but not publicly. Many were in clandestine romances. Afraid of being caught this night was like breaking the seal on that rule. Standing off stage, I focused on Joseph's position. He was by the window, talking to a friend. When he noticed my gaze, he raised his glass in acknowledgement. Everything was set. I embarked on the longest 60 seconds of my life. Walking towards Joseph from the stage, what felt like 10 steps actually represented 10 years. From 23 to 33, from the first promise to the failed attempts, this was my last chance, my desired resolution. Last week, my aunt messaged me, hinting that Joseph was getting serious with a girl and even asked if good news was on the horizon. After dancing around each other for a decade, my aunt already considered me her daughter. The moment was drawing closer. In the darkness, I caught a whiff of familiar woody scent. Taking out the prepared ring, a simple band I had crafted, engraved with symbols of our past. In the pitch-black darkness, I raised the ring towards the direction I was certain he stood, and nervously whispered, "Joseph, let's get married." As the lights came on, I smiled, ready to receive his enthusiastic response, but the scene in front of me stole the colors from the world. The moonlight washed through the windows, illuminating a couple passionately kissing inside. The man held the woman's head, gently kissing her, even as the lights came back on. She blushed, unsure where to place her hands. Above them, the drones were performing an elaborate but ignored proposal in the night sky. Wait, did she manage to win over the boss? That new girl? Look, the drone's pattern resembles a ring, doesn't it? I felt a cold shiver run through me, my hand held out rigidly like a piece of wood, unable to retract. The man seemed to finally notice my presence, released the woman, smirked, and asked, "What's the matter?" His lips faintly stained with lipstick. I stiffened my neck, focusing all my strength, ignoring the soft fragrance in his arms, glaring directly into his eyes. "Are you serious?" The tension in my mind was like a tightly wound string, just a touch away from a thunderous release. Joseph glanced at the object in my palm, picked it up, and tossed the silver band into his glass, watching it sink quickly. A dare? This joke went too far. He swirled the glass, held onto the girl in his arms, and casually said, "Irene, don't make a scene." The string that had been tense for 10 years finally snapped. Gossip and whispers filled the space. The host, an experienced wedding MC, tried to regain the audience's attention, but it was futile. I lowered my head, feeling numb in my heart. Even though I was standing on a soft carpet, it felt like I was stepping on a knife edge. I knew exactly what it meant when he didn't mention marriage, yet I insisted on pushing for an answer, willing to fight until someone's head was bloody just to get some closure. Reluctantly admitting, I truly fit someone's description, a stubborn fool. Because of my stubbornness, during my school days, I had to rank first in my class, shutting up the guy who always teased me for being in second place. Due to my stubbornness, I stuck with Joseph in starting a business, never once regretting it no matter how tough the situation became. Because of my stubbornness, I pretended to be like him, carefree and indifferent, thinking that after all the twists and turns, we would end up in the same place. Now, what's the difference between me now and the secretary he heartlessly abandoned years ago? I took off the ring in my hand and handed it to his sister in his embrace. "Here, take it." The girl blushed, looking unsure, and glanced timidly at the man behind her. "Irene, what do you mean?" Joseph's eyes darkened. "Useless things that don't belong together should be thrown away." I casually tossed the girl's ring into his glass. The two couple rings reunited in the cup and sank together. "I don't want it." "The ring, like you, can stay with him." As soon as the car started moving, Joseph began calling frantically. In the past, as long as he called me and I wasn't in a meeting, would always pick up within 3 rings. Now, even if it rang until it hung up on its own, I chose to ignore it. Siri began announcing his messages. Irene, where are you? They said you were going to prank me tonight. I'm sorry about everything. The phone rang persistently. Failed in love, then talk business. We are business partners, blacklisting each other is unnecessary. I let Siri answer the phone and said directly, I don't think there's a need for further discussion. There was a silence on the other end. A low, amused chuckle echoed in the car. You're already in a rush to reject me even before I speak. The rich voice carried a hint of mockery. I stopped the car immediately and glanced at the incoming call. This tone, calling from an overseas number at this hour, it could only be him. Sorry, Eric, I thought. It seems your marriage proposal didn't go smoothly. It failed, I admitted calmly, not minding that it was Eric, my former arch-rival. I'm sorry to hear that. There was no hint of consolation in his voice, rather a touch of schadenfreude. Interested in switching sides and come to my company? I firmly declined, knowing he had ulterior motives. Turning the car around, I realized the e-cigarette was missing, irritably rolled down the window, letting the night breeze into the car. Making money the same way, why not choose a more comfortable boss? The man tempted me. I am a partner. Mature business people never resist opportunities. After spending the night sorting out property documents, I returned to the company early in the morning with the relevant files. From the lobby security guards to the receptionist in the CEO's office, accompanying gazes were either probing or sympathetic. It seemed my actions last night had circulated throughout the entire conglomerate. The blackish-purple door in front of me was cold and luxurious, which I had personally ordered in the beginning. How many times had I pushed open this door with anticipation, only to leave disappointed? The door suddenly swung open. Before I could react, I was pulled inside. The room was dim, all the floor-to-ceiling windows were covered with curtains, the room was filled with a strong smell of alcohol. It was a mess everywhere. Where were you last night? The man was still in yesterday's clothes, his hair disheveled, his eyes slightly purple, looking terrifying. Why didn't you answer my calls? He grabbed my shoulders, buried his face in my neck, and tried to find a place with his burning lips. The envelope of the resignation letter blocked his demand. Let's break up. I met his bewildered eyes calmly. Just because I kissed someone else yesterday? The man became flustered, crumpling my envelope, clutching my wrist tightly. I'm sorry. It was just with her. Just what? I interrupted his sophistry. Just a performance? Or like a few years ago, just a moment of impulse? You clearly know that was my bottom line. A few years ago, he stepped over a line, which has always been a knot in my heart. Now, the same thing is happening again. I don't want to continue playing the role of incomplete lovers with him. She said she liked me, so passionately, like a ball of fire. The thrill of a first encounter is such a charming temptation. The hard part is staying content for the long haul. Last night you could drop the ring, today you can drop him. Pushing his hand away, I felt exhausted. Joseph, let's just call it quits. He suddenly turned around, opened a drawer abruptly, and took out a dark red notebook. Isn't it about getting married? Let's go now. My palms went numb. Realizing the situation, the slap had already landed. Can you? I gritted my teeth, trying hard to hold back tears, not wanting my 10 years to be humiliated. Opening the door, the eavesdropper who was crouching by the door suddenly fell down. Stop eavesdropping. Do you still want to have some afternoon tea? I waved to my assistant John to buy everyone some afternoon tea, while instructing, help me clean up the place, bring a paper box. Upon hearing this, he was dumbfounded. Sis, are you leaving? Let's keep it quiet for now. Although I am leaving, the company is also my hard work, and I don't want people to be anxious because of the top management issues. Can you take me with you? Joseph is a good boss and won't mistreat you guys. I patted his shoulder. I have plans to start my own business, but I don't want others to give up good benefits and take risks with me. Looking back at the dimly lit office, I turned and left the position I had been guarding for 10 years. A flashy sports car was parked downstairs. Even in the elite CBD, the flame-like body of the car still attracted attention. I was in no mood to appreciate it, so I walked past it, and the doors behind me opened suddenly. A tall man with long legs stepped out of the car. Eric, who was in England last night, appeared here now, looking quite pleased with himself. He picked up an exaggerated bunch of yellow roses from the back seat and stuffed them into my arms. Beyond his shoulder, I saw Joseph coming after us, abruptly stopping, his eyes dark with worry. Childish or not, I couldn't be bothered dealing with Eric, who had come specifically to make things difficult for Joseph, and decided to return the flowers. A tall figure rushed in front of me, keeping Eric at bay. I knew it, who has such lousy taste. Joseph glanced at the flamboyant sports car, his tone unfriendly. Eric, how have you been? When did you come back? Eric smiled and said, long time no see. Probably when you sealed the deal with the pretty little sister. The two exchanged polite words, but their eyes looked fierce, as if they were about to bite each other, and the next second Eric was my archenemy in high school. He always effortlessly claimed the top spot in the class and deliberately came to me asking where I was lacking. He made me cry several times in anger, so I had to study hard in secret, doubling my efforts. Finally, I defeated him in one exam. But just that once. When I entered university, this guy suddenly had a change of heart and started pursuing me. At that time, I had just met Joseph. My eyes were full of that person with a sparkle in his eye. Eric said I was blind. I said he was jealous. He was so angry that he decided to go abroad directly in his third year, taking my confession as a passing fancy, with no follow-up. However, every year on my birthday, I would receive a gift signed by Eric. At 24, Joseph gave me a bouquet of roses, while Eric had a flower shop truck deliver flowers. At 26, Joseph cooked me a tableful of dishes, while Eric invited a Michelin chef to cook at the party venue. At 28, Joseph allocated 60% of the company's profits to me, while Eric's lawyer came with documents, saying that if I signed, I would be the owner of a company that made money lying down. Even though I didn't accept it, Joseph was still very upset. You resigned because of him? The man standing in front of me sounded hoarse, his fists clenched. I sighed. Is it because of him, don't you know? If it weren't for Eric, we would have split up several years ago. It's been years since we met, and you're still so childish. Leaning against the car, Eric casually lit a cigarette, raised his eyelids at me, as if saying, see, there's someone more childish than me. I still have things to discuss with Irene. Eric, please go back. Joseph tried to hold back his anger, turning around to drag me away. Eric took a step with his long legs, blocking him. There should be a first come, first served order. Joseph. The two confronted each other on the street, tension rising, attracting a lot of people entering and exiting the office building to stop and watch. You guys take your time to chat. I'll go first. With that, he lifted the roses in his hand and said, I'll take the flowers, and I already have the car. Stepping into my black Mercedes with long strides, the sports car had a low chassis and I was not used to the seating. Kathy heard that Joseph and I had broken up. She was so happy that she screamed, 8 o'clock tonight, I'll take you out for something nice, sis. She added, wear your battle uniform. If I had known what she meant by nice, would not have accepted the invitation. In the past, Joseph didn't like me wearing dresses, especially those slightly flamboyant styles. In the early years, we would discuss business at the wine table, and there were always some dishonest eyes staring at the ladies at the table. Once, an investor put his greasy hand on my shoulder in front of Joseph, and asked him to offer me to him. Joseph directly beat the man into the hospital. Naturally, the business went downhill. At the police station, he suddenly got angry with me, forbidding me to dress like that again. Am I so useless that I need you to sell your looks? I looked at him in astonishment, and finally turned it into a sigh. After that, I never wore a dress again. The only one in the closet was the one Kathy gave me on my birthday. I looked at the woman in the mirror, feeling a bit strange. The black fishtail skirt outlined a slim waist, a few strands of hair pulled up, lightly touched red lips, cold as water. At 33, I started wearing beautiful dresses again. The location Kathy gave me was the largest nightclub. As soon as we got off the car, a handsome waiter kept leading us inside. The lights flickered, creating a bewitching atmosphere. When we opened the private room, the music hit us. Kathy and a few girlfriends were having a blast singing. Just as I sat down, Kathy picked up the microphone and announced loudly, "Tonight is the night my sister breaks free from suffering and returns to the forest. We won't leave until we're drunk." She snapped her fingers towards the entrance. I poured myself a drink, and when I looked up, I saw an unforgettable scene. Several tall, well-dressed and handsome men entered in a line, followed by 4 or 5 gorgeous girls. "What's going on here?" "Greetings on behalf of your sister," Kathy exclaimed heroically. The men turned their heads to me in unison, all in perfect formation. I immediately got up, pulled Kathy aside, and asked in a low voice, "How long has this been going on?" She proudly said, "About 2 or 3 years." I took a deep breath. Various legal provisions and images of life behind bars flashed through my mind. Good business? Well, yes. In the past few years, with their good looks, they had no problem with food and clothing. Business has been bad recently, so they had to find another way out. Since you're going solo now, why not take them under your wing? I was shocked, looking at her disbelievingly, breaking out in a cold sweat. "You guys go outside first," I said coldly, ushering the handsome men and beauties out. Then I embraced Kathy firmly. "I'll go with you to turn yourself in. You can't do this anymore." Kathy was stunned, covering her mouth laughing as she collapsed on the sofa. "Sister, this is a legitimate model agency. The market is tough recently. These are all good talents. Why not take them as your first batch of artists?" I was dumbfounded. "Do you still remember our high school dreams? That cicada singing summer, we both fantasized about the future crazily, carefree and happy. Over the years, I dedicated myself to the company I founded with Joseph. He focused on product technology development, while I was in charge of external channel marketing, complementing each other in harmony. No one knew that I was not passionate about digital products, nor did I understand development. Every time a new product was released, I would force myself to study the thick manuals, meticulously noting down each technical detail and asking the tech team about anything I didn't understand. Now that I have parted ways with Joseph, I no longer have to look at those books. I hugged Kathy tightly, my eyes watering. She rubbed my hair and said, "You're only 33, you still have plenty of time. Whatever you choose to do, I support you. Why am I pushing myself towards the copy of marriage like playing a game? My world can be an open game." Handsome men and beautiful women walked into the private room again, each greeting me nervously. I invited them to sit down, opened a bottle of wine, and started chatting about each person's experiences, trying to get to know them better. After 2 or 3 drinks, the reserved young people began to warm up. "Sister, how do you maintain yourself? You look about the same age as us." "What are you talking about? Sister naturally has good looks, no maintenance needed." Laughter filled the room. Looking at those energetic faces, I thought of myself 10 years ago. Full of enthusiasm for the future, just like them. When did my life reduce to just work, socializing, and the firm steps with Joseph that I thought were certain, but were actually diverging? In the late night, those who could sing well took turns to perform. I was immersed in the music, pouring myself a full glass. After finishing it, I poured another. "Irene, after tonight, you need to move forward." Feeling dizzy, I leaned back on the sofa, intoxicated. The sofa sank next to me. Someone sat down beside me and covered the mouth of my glass. "Don't drink anymore." The voice was cold, with a hint of anger. I followed that pale, slender hand all the way up. In the dim light, a sharp-featured face emerged. "Why are there 2 Erics?" I placed my hand on one of the Eric's faces, laughing. "This one is real. Come on. Have a drink with me." My wrist was gripped, and a hoarse question came from above. "Irene, who am I?" I tilted my head back, my thoughts muddled, then squinted my eyes a little. This nose, those eyes, that mouth, handsomely mature. I didn't get it wrong, it's Eric. What, did you lose your memory? Forgot even who you are? I pointed to his nose, bursting into laughter. Hurry up and cry, no one here will see it. As I laughed, he said, I'm not human, remember? In a tone that was both resigned and bitter. Then why would I cry? I replied with a smile. Eric poured himself a full glass. Okay, I'll drink with you. It was my turn to cover his glass. There was a question that needed to be answered first. Eric, what do you like about me? Why have you persisted for so long? If it was just to spite Joseph, he wouldn't have immediately flown back from the UK upon hearing that I failed a marriage proposal. He wouldn't have come back every year to give me a birthday gift without fail for 10 years. Eric chuckled lightly. Well, what about you? There was a tone of helplessness and bitterness in his voice as he asked, why? Why did I remember when we first started the business with Joseph, witnessing all the vicissitudes of life? That night, after seeing an investor, the 3 months of product planning and samples were all destroyed, the backups were also wiped clean. We didn't even know who the culprit was, and we were so poor we couldn't even afford to buy surveillance cameras. Although I could redo it all from memory, there was simply no time. Finally, I managed to use a demo that was automatically synced to the cloud, apologizing to the investor while highlighting the key points of our product as much as possible. Although we didn't get the investment, we left a deep impression on the investor. A year later, we rallied and further improved our product, knocking on the investor's door again. After successfully securing a large investment, we planned to celebrate by eating at the investor's company building. We left 2 restaurants in a row, both in agreement that they were too expensive. Every penny was hard-earned and had to be spent prudently. In the end, we ordered 2 sets of Odin at a convenience store. Joseph put all the meat from his bowl into mine, drank a large bowl of soup, and said he was full. Later, when we had money, we could afford the best restaurant in the city. But we never had a proper meal together again. Eric, I want to eat Odin, I said. He was silent for a while, then put down his glass of wine and agreed. Before leaving, I went to the restroom and got accosted by a drunkard. I felt a splitting headache from his annoyance, as he started getting handsy. My temper flared, and I pushed him away forcefully. The drunkard, who was just acting tough moments ago, sobered up a bit after being pushed to the ground and jumped up, roaring in anger, accusing me of acting self-righteous and even raising his arm. Just as he was about to make a move, a familiar figure intervened, separating me and the drunkard, enveloping me with a familiar fragrance. Joseph and his friends happened to pass by and witnessed the scene. His friend dragged the drunkard away, while Joseph stayed behind, silently watching me. Why are you so drunk? He frowned deeply, his affectionate peach blossom eyes reflecting my disheveled appearance. I shrugged off the helping hand and said, thanks, before parting ways. Joseph grabbed my elbow and prevented me from leaving. A clear voice sounded, Sister. Do you need help? A handsome young man dashed out of the restroom, looking like one of the people Kathy brought earlier. I waved him off. I'll wait for you in the private room, sister, he smiled and winked at me. The man behind me darkened his face, his knuckles cracking as he was about to speak up. Sister, I've been looking for you. Another good-looking guy passed by, trying to pull me back to the private room. Joseph couldn't take it anymore. Get lost, he growled, chasing the man away. Turning back, he gripped my shoulder, grinding his teeth, and said, Irene, what are you doing? I looked at the face I once loved without any ripples in my heart. It's none of your business. Boss. There you are, making it hard for me to find you. An adorable girl threw herself at me. Didn't we agree not to leave until we get drunk tonight? Her soft body stuck to mine, forcefully pushing Joseph aside. How can you leave on your own? Joseph gawked in disbelief, veins popping, nearing his breaking point. Ignoring everyone, he pushed the girl away, grabbed my arm, and walked with me. Busy with work, Eric walked out from the corner, unhurriedly. If my memory serves me right, Irene is no longer your employee, right? The word employee carried a weighty implication. Joseph's face drained of color, releasing his tension, and forced a smile. So this is how you felt back then. He wiped his face, his handsome features weary and dim. Remember to come for my mom's birthday next month. Joseph, I won't come. It's up to you. Joseph turned away, dejectedly saying, she told me yesterday that she misses you. As they walked away, Eric asked, are we still going for Odin? Let's go. What's holding us back? Soon after, Joseph's lawyer came to discuss matters, and though the company property division was intricate, it was going through the proper channels. Once the formalities were completed, I received a sizable sum of money, enough to show off. Looking at the line of zeros in my bank account, I suddenly felt like laughing. This was everything I had exchanged 10 years for. With the funds and personnel in place, the next step was to establish connections in the entertainment industry. Through Kathy's introduction, there was an opportunity to meet the well-connected senior figure in the industry, Mary. Before visiting the big shot, I needed to prepare a thoughtful gift. After learning about their interest in collecting antique books, I found out about an upcoming auction where many collectors and wealthy individuals would showcase their treasures, including a set of inconspicuous antique books. That night, armed with the invitation Kathy had arranged for me, I entered the auction. The banquet hall was lit up glamorously, filled with chatter and clinking glasses. After exchanging greetings with some familiar business partners, I sat in a corner, waiting for the auction to commence. Suddenly, a commotion at the entrance caught my attention. A man in a tailored black suit walked through the crowd and approached the organizer, exchanging pleasantries. As the company's tax payments increased annually, Joseph's name resonated louder in high society circles. Young, wealthy, unmarried, the epitome of what the elite favored for his rags to riches story, capability, good looks, and no balding. Young socialites blushed and looked towards the door. Isn't he the one on the magazine cover 2 weeks ago? Yes, but he seems to have brought a female companion. That's his sister, but even though he's so handsome, at 33, he can't still be single. Not bringing a girlfriend to such an occasion, bringing his sister instead. Maybe he's in a relationship transition phase. Sitting in the corner, I looked up slightly. The young girl beside him was in her early 20s, dressed cutely and attractively. She was Helen, Joseph's sister, 10 years younger than him. Joseph doted on her excessively, ensuring she lacked nothing, not even during our financial struggles. When Helen was being bullied during her early days of studying abroad, she was too scared to tell her brother and called me in the middle of the night. I rushed over to help her covertly. Afraid she might recognize me, I shrunk my shoulders. She was still caught by her at a glance. Sister. She glanced at her brother, looking like a pitiful little one who wanted to come over but didn't dare. The crowd was silenced by her loud voice and all looked over. I nodded awkwardly. Joseph remained silent, his face becoming more and more unpleasant. Helen wanted to sit at my table, but was stared at by her brother, so she obediently sat down, looking aggrieved, twirling the tablecloth. Although separated from Joseph, I still cared a lot for Helen. Most people come here for socializing, and there are probably not many with as clear goals as I have. Shouldn't be a problem. The socialites around me were still discussing in low voices. It seems like he has been looking over here. Is he looking at me? Maybe I am thinking too much. If he wants to look, he would be looking at me. I almost made eye contact just now. This blind date option given by my father is much better than before. I only cared about the items up for auction, everything unrelated to me. Sensing a sharp gaze that seemed to follow me everywhere. My budget was limited, but I had made thorough preparations. The only variable was when I slightly raised my eyes and glanced past the fierce profile in front of me. After several rounds, everyone noticed the discord between me and him, and discussions were abuzz. I sighed and stopped raising the paddle. Helen, who had been sitting next to me, couldn't bear it and pressed down on her brother's paddle. It was only then that I managed to win a few small items, including a pair of men's cufflinks. After the auction, Joseph stopped me at the door. The items you bid on will be delivered to your residence later. I was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Joseph, no pain, no gain. Whatever I want, I will fight for it myself. If I can't get it, it's just me biting off more than I can chew." These words were innocent, but they meant something else to Joseph's ears. His hand rested on my ear. "I just want one thing from you, that pair of men's cufflinks." So that was what he cared about. "I'm sorry, but the item belongs to someone else already." Joseph looked as if he had been struck by a heavy blow, remaining silent for a long time. He lowered his proud head and his voice was hoarse. "Irene, I was wrong. Please give me another chance. Irene, all the things you want are here." I pushed Joseph aside and nodded to the person behind me. Joseph immediately understood, laughing with his whole body trembling. "So it's not these things you wanted. I really underestimated you, Irene." I thanked Joseph for his praise. I knew Joseph too well. The more he refused to back down, the more he would compete during the auction. I didn't want to waste any unnecessary money, so I contacted Kathy, who immediately got a male model to bid for me. I bid on a bunch of small items to make Joseph think I was leaving disappointed. Meanwhile, the items I truly wanted had already been purchased by the male model at a low price. "Irene, I feel like..." His eyes filled with sadness. "I have never really understood you. I have always been like this. It's just that in the past, I only used these means on others." Eric received my gift, happily preparing to pounce on me, which startled me and made me retreat. He unwrapped a sapphire cufflink worth several times what I had spent and put on the one I gave him. "This is the first gift you've given me, I will cherish it." His words were heartfelt and full of sincerity. Surprisingly, even though I had known Eric for so long, I had never given him a decent gift. 10 years ago, he never missed preparing a birthday gift for me and carrying rare book collectibles to visit Mary, inviting me to join the visit. "Take me with you, and I'll be your secretary." He stepped over the company's general manager and came to my small company every day to assist, even wanting to be my secretary. When he met Mary, I understood why he was so insistent. The rare books were just an icebreaker. What really made her willing to sit down and listen to my proposal was seeing Eric. "How's your mother doing?" "She's doing great. She left on another trip last month." Eric's mother and Mary were old friends. That's why she looked at Eric with the eyes of seeing her own child. Throughout the visit, Eric remained silent and handed over the stage entirely to me. Mary and I hit it off, almost forgetting Eric was sitting next to us. It was Mary who joyfully asked, "Eric is at the age to settle down, isn't he?" "Sister, you're kidding. I'm still chasing after girls." As he spoke, he began to get up to pour tea. From where I sat, I could see Eric's ears turning red. After the visit, I pondered in Eric's car. The company had not yet taken off properly, and I already owed a lot of favors. Could I really make it? If I failed, would those who trusted me be disappointed? Eric opened the convertible top of the sports car. It was drizzling in the rainy season, and we were suddenly showered. "Eric, what are you doing?" I raised my hand in panic to shield myself from the rain, inadvertently also shielding him. "Irene, when did you start hesitating so much?" I blinked and looked at him in the wind and rain, feeling warmth spreading in my heart. Where did that person who tore up my report card and challenged me go? The one who was fearless and didn't care about anything. Why did I lose that person? I am afraid of losing, afraid of being underestimated by Joseph, afraid of being laughed at by young people, afraid of others' judgment. So what? Acknowledging the fear of losing doesn't mean I can't afford to lose. Through Mary's introduction, I successfully secured the IP rights of a small but well-received project and even got a slot in a famous director's schedule. All that was missing now was a lead actor who could shoulder the project. I had someone in mind, but no one knew that the famous actress Anna and I had once been dorm buddies. I slept opposite her, watching her come to report day by day, looking increasingly haggard, and my heart ached for her. I compiled a list of non-spicy restaurants near the school and put it on her desk. Later, she developed a tolerance for spicy food, and we became close buddies sharing a bed. It wasn't until I gave up going to a better school with her because of Joseph that she was deeply disappointed. Anna always disliked Joseph, saying he had a face that easily betrayed others. I hoped she could put aside her bias against him for my sake. This made her so angry that she even refused to take a graduation photo with me. She said, "Irene, you will regret this." For 10 years, I had only seen her at major media events and on stage receiving awards. Now, at the age of 33, Anna was firmly in the top tier. When I received the script, the first person I thought of was her. There was no one more suitable. The contact information I shamelessly obtained led me to a phone call with her assistant, who said Anna was willing to meet me. Nervously, I knocked on the door. As soon as the door opened, a stunningly beautiful woman with red eyes looked at me. Time flies, and she was no longer the young girl who would stick her tongue out when eating spicy food. "If I don't contact you for a day, do you just not see me?" Anna, with red eyes, grabbed a cushion worth thousands on the sofa and threw it at me. Memories of our pillow fights in college came to mind. "Are you a pig? Can't you even dodge?" The ice-cold beauty in the eyes of the public, the famous actress, was now in front of me, showing a temper like a child. I dropped my handbag and embraced her. "Anna, you're right, it was my fault." A wave of warmth and moisture enveloped my shoulders. That night, we squeezed onto a bed, gossiping, sharing our hearts, just as intimate as we were 10 years ago. When Anna heard about my failed marriage proposal, she was so angry that she sat up in bed, demanding to expose the scumbag. I quickly held her back. "It's all in the past. You're just letting him off like that?" Anna was indignant. "I just want to let myself go." Anna wanted to act for free, but I insisted otherwise. "If you don't want to earn my money, can you make up the shortfall for your company yourself?" After some persuasion, she finally agreed for me to pay part of the fee to her company. It took another month to visit one by one, confirming the schedules of the director and all the lead actors. All the available funds were invested in the pre-production planning, and once again, I experienced the feeling of not having enough money. Every time Eric tried to speak up, I managed to dodge his inquiries. Anyone else's money could be borrowed, just not his, because he couldn't pay it back. A week before filming started, I visited the author with the adapted script. The author, a newcomer, was very excited to see me. I had seen the potential in his work before it became popular and bought the entire series of film and television rights. He was grateful and kept saying thank you, and I told him that the good days were still ahead. 3 days before shooting began, the chief director suddenly asked to meet me. Feeling slightly uneasy, I flew to meet him overnight. He immediately criticized me and unexpectedly proposed to add a new character at the last minute. "No. The script has been finalized with the author. It can't be changed," I firmly replied. "Irene, could you talk to the original writer again?" he suggested. "He's willing to act for free with just a small role." Flipping through the pages, I coldly said, "With nearly 100 scenes and scenes opposite the lead, do you call that a small role?" The original work didn't even have a prototype. It was tailored to the newcomer. When the director realized I was unyielding, he became frustrated. "If you don't agree, then I won't shoot." "Director, I admire your talent and respect your decisions. Mary recommended you, but this film is the first production of my company, and I won't allow anyone to compromise its perfection." After failing to reach an agreement, he asked me to reconsider and left. As soon as I left, I immediately contacted friends in the industry to prepare a list of potential directors. In the middle of the night, Kathy called with bad news. "Go ahead, it can't get any worse than it is now," I replied. "The original author's fans are criticizing you online once again." I underestimated how unlucky things could get. Seeing the comments on the internet made me feel sick. The author's loyal fans posted long rants, accusing me of performing for the author, promising to respect the script, then letting someone change it with a highlighted page full of resources. When did I ask someone to contact the author? In just a few hours, stirred up by netizens, the fans of the original work were furious and began searching for my personal information. Other fans who had been victims of malicious adaptations joined forces, one by one condemning me and calling for a boycott of all activities related to my company. With such organized, rhythmic, and purposeful attacks, I could only think of one possibility. I picked up the phone and called. "Was it you who approached the author and blamed it on me?" The other end of the line was noisy, glasses clinking, and a man impatiently said, "If you're not willing to talk to the author, I will. Don't forget, we're in the same boat. Do you really want to burn your bridges?" I was so angry that I almost crushed the phone. "I can't believe a resource celebrity could make you do this. Girl, don't you think I want to shoot well? But you offended someone, and now they've deliberately sent someone to piss you off. I can't do anything about it. Do you know Joseph?" I went cold all over, my mind blank. The lights outside the tall buildings shone brightly, but not a single one was waiting for me. I don't know how long passed before I dialed a number from the blacklist. The call was quickly answered, as if someone had been waiting. "Irene, come back. Whatever you want to do, whether it's starting a company or getting married, I'll support you." Something I once longed for, I now had at my fingertips. "But I didn't want it at all, Joseph. You're just a fool." I hung up the phone and removed the SIM card. In any case, first scold him. Even if all my efforts and years of accumulated wealth were wiped out overnight, I wouldn't bow down to him. At 3 in the morning, a gentle breeze blew along the river. I took off my high heels, stood barefoot by the river, feeling the cool breeze on my face. The beer I bought at the convenience store gradually emptied as my mind remained unusually clear. Awakening to see the huge sign on the other side of the river. "Joseph. Are you a fool? I must have been blind to fall for you," I exclaimed, rushing to the edge of the river. Stepping on a nearby stone bench, I shouted at the building across, "Irene. Don't be foolish in your next life." As I closed my eyes, the unbeatable river view suddenly disappeared. A warmth around my waist. I was lifted up by an irresistible force, held securely and placed back on the ground. Who was attacking me from behind? I was startled, turned around, and saw Eric, his face wet with tears. He, my rival whom I had battled with for over a decade, a man who wouldn't shed a tear even when bleeding, held me tightly, trembling all over. He slowly closed his eyes, his voice hoarse and sorrowful. "Irene, don't be foolish. Short of money, even if bankrupt tomorrow, I can help fill it up for you. Short of people, I don't need the company now. I'll come to help you with chores. Whatever you lack, I, Eric, can provide. Please, don't do anything foolish," he said. His head buried in my shoulder, his hot tears wetting my skin. I was both amused and heartbroken, patting his back gently, asking softly, "Who are you to me? Doing this and that for me?" He raised his head, his eyes red, looking at me seriously. "Even if you don't have me in your heart right now, I'm willing." "Eric." I fixed his hair tousled by the river wind, asking, "When did you become so humble?" "Just now. Watching you suddenly charge up, step on the bench, and close your eyes. In that moment, I regretted," he said, "regretted waiting for you to turn around like a fool, regretted not confessing properly to you, regretted not snatching you up directly 10 years ago. Regretted my stubborn pride." I stared at him blankly. Such a straightforward, intense, vulgar confession. To think that one day, it would be directed at me. I stood up, embraced his neck, and choked, "Fool. I'm the fool." Eric carried me on his back, walking down the street. I scolded director for his lack of loyalty, Joseph for his black-heartedness, the fans for their senselessness, and heard him agree good-naturedly, "Yes, you're right." After berating them, I fell asleep on his back. The next day, I woke up lying on a strange bed. Clean sheets warm as spring. I stretched lazily, then looked down and was startled. A furry head was sleeping at the edge of my bed. The bright sunlight poured in, dancing on his long eyelashes. His lips were surprisingly attractive, sharp-tongued as usual. I had never noticed before. "Eric," I gently woke him up. His eyes slowly opened, subconsciously touching my blanket to confirm my position, then rubbed his arm that had been my pillow all night. Seeing me staring straight at him, Eric scratched his head awkwardly, You were really drunk last night, afraid you might choke on your vomit in the middle of the night. He sat up the whole night. Besides being afraid that I might choke, were you also worried that I might have second thoughts in the middle of the night? He stood up, preparing to leave. His body moved faster than his mind, and I threw myself onto his strong back. I grabbed his waist firmly and rested my chin on his shoulder. Eric, do you not want to acknowledge yesterday's words? The man in my arms was like a piece of wood, his hand on my back, his voice hoarse, still hungover. I leaned towards his face, whispering, "Shall we check?" and brushed his beautiful ear gently with my lips. Eric suddenly turned around. An intense fierceness flashed in his eyes. I let go of his hand, backing away. It was already too late. Eric easily lifted me up, and I lost my balance, quickly holding onto his neck. He placed me by the window, pressed a remote, and pulled all the curtains. The room fell back into darkness. When I woke again, the curtains had been pulled back, and the room was still dim. I realized it had been a full day of turmoil. My hungry stomach growled, and I kicked the man next to me out of annoyance. "I'm hungry," I said. The man raised his eyelids slightly, showing a satisfied smile. If it weren't for my exhaustion, I would have kicked him off the bed. "Don't be angry. What do you want to eat?" "I'll make it," he said, holding my ankle and tucking me back under the covers. After freshening up, I sneaked into the kitchen, watching Eric put on a black apron, holding his phone for recipes, and cooking with a bowed head. I walked slowly behind him, embracing his waist. "Anything will do, I'm really hungry." He stopped, broke my embrace, and pushed me out of the kitchen. "If you want to eat, don't bother me." Suddenly, he remembered something and glanced meaningfully at the clean stove. "Kitchens can be dangerous. It's better if you don't come in." He gave me a meaningful look before leaving. Realizing his intentions, I almost dashed out of his house. After finally eating, Eric asked me about the online matters and if he could help. I declined his offer, stating that I wanted to handle it myself. Joseph had calculated that I would attend his mother's birthday banquet 2 days later. Whether out of gratitude for his aunt's care in the past or his public pressure, I would not miss this banquet. What he didn't expect was that I would daringly bring Eric along. Auntie's eyes lit up at the sight of me and left her sister to come over. The elegant and composed woman, upon seeing Eric by my side, could hardly conceal her displeasure. "Irene, who is this?" "Auntie, my boyfriend, Eric." "Irene, Auntie wants to talk to you alone." Eric nodded, giving us some space. "Over the years, I've seen you and Joseph come a long way, without love but with affection. Why now does it seem like you're on bad terms for life?" She held my hand, her face filled with sorrow. "Auntie, we're not suitable." "What's not suitable?" "I think you're the most suitable pair. It's just that boy doesn't know how to cherish, and now you've run off with someone else. He's just drinking at home all day. Is that useful?" "It's indeed useless," I said lightly. Despite blaming her son, she actually wanted to plead his case. "I had come today not only to celebrate your birthday and thank you for your care over the years, but also to seek an explanation from Joseph." A commotion at the door. The host's son, who had not shown up, appeared with a female companion, much to everyone's surprise. I recognized her at a glance, the newcomer who had been forcibly included, Celine. "Mom," Joseph led Celine over to us. Their eyes met mine briefly before quickly looking away. What happened next, no one had expected. Auntie thought it was unacceptable for her son to bring another woman to the family banquet. It was as if he was slapping her in the face. Stepping forward, she raised her hand and gave Joseph a resounding slap in the face. Everyone turned to look and the banquet gradually quieted down. With swift movements, Celine, who was standing nearby, was taken aback. "Aunt." Realizing what was happening, Celine stepped in front of Joseph. "Let go. I can't teach someone else's daughter. My son can't be controlled today." Aunt Moo's face turned cold as she raised her hand for another resounding slap, even louder than before. The force of the slap was powerful, causing the man's face to swell up immediately, with blood starting to seep from the corners of his mouth. I stood there in a daze. I never expected Aunt to be so ruthless and sparing with words. Then I remembered, she was once a woman who supported us by buying groceries and fish, single-handedly raising Joseph and supporting him through his education. Joseph, being a filial son, didn't even dare to wipe away the blood stains, standing there in shock. Celine, feeling unhappy, pushed Joseph aside and confronted Aunt. "You are his mother, but I am his future wife. Dare to hit him today, and tomorrow I'll send you to a nursing home." This declaration left everyone in shock. Aunt pointed a trembling finger at Celine, but then clutched her chest, the color draining from her face, clearly in extreme pain. "Mom." Aunt fainted from the anger. The crowd gathered around the emergency room, while the red light above lit up. The birthday celebration had turned into this mess. Joseph slumped against the wall, too exhausted to even sit on the floor. Celine, with her smudged eye makeup, clung to Joseph's shoulder, softly sobbing, "Joseph, I didn't mean to." The man remained silent, staring blankly at the blood-streaked floor. "Could you stop looking like that?" Celine, who was usually pampered at home and rarely apologized, couldn't bear being met with a cold shoulder. She stood up in anger, grabbed her purse, and hurled it at Joseph. "I did it because I was worried about you." "Get lost," Joseph said in a low voice. "What did you say?" Celine was incredulous, tears streaming down her face as she cried and made a scene. "Joseph, you can't treat me like this. Who is the patient's family member?" Joseph suddenly stood up, completely ignoring the girl who had fallen to the ground after being hit. A nurse approached with a pile of documents, requesting a family member's signature. Joseph silently took the pen and signed the critical condition notice with trembling hands. I stood in a corner of the hallway, feeling a mix of emotions. Joseph was in the wrong, but his mother had supported us during our early days of entrepreneurship, selling all her valuable jewelry in secret to help us out. She had entrusted it to me, telling me not to tell Joseph, as he would never accept it. With that money invested, we faced failures and quickly hit rock bottom. She never once blamed us. She said, "Young people must dare to take risks, and family will always be our support." A warm coat covered my shoulders, carrying her lingering warmth. After the incident, Eric never left my side and stayed with me consistently. I leaned against him, feeling physically and mentally drained. 6 hours later, the red light turned off, and the doors opened. The surgery was successful, and Joseph was so overcome with emotion that he almost knelt down. However, when he turned around to share the good news with me, he caught sight of Eric behind me, causing him to halt abruptly. I took off Eric's coat, handing it back to him. "I just need to say a few words to him and I'll be right back." "Okay." The wind on the hospital terrace was strong. I regretted not wearing Eric's coat when I came out. Seeing me shivering from the cold, Joseph immediately took off his coat and offered it to me. I waved it off. His eyes dimmed, filled with disappointment. "Thank you for tonight." He was thanking me for calling 911 immediately in the chaos and contacting Aunt's attending physician to rush to the hospital for treatment. The doctor, who was familiar with Aunt's heart condition, quickly communicated with the surgeon. "Aunt had always been kind to me. It was only cruel to you." He paused, took a deep breath, "and I regret it too much. 10 years ago, I already knew that you were my future wife, but, being too young and wild, I couldn't resist the temptations of the outside world. I was not satisfied at that time, succumbing to the lure of the world outside. I consoled myself, saying that once I got married, things would stabilize. But I was wrong. When I turned back, you were no longer where you had been before. I regret it. How could I have agreed to let you go in the first place, and how could I have watched another man snatch you away? Irene, I'm sorry for everything." He suddenly knelt down, taking a velvet box from his pocket and gently opening it. Inside lay the engagement ring that I had dropped into the drink that day. "The ring, I have kept it all this while, hoping that one day I could put it back on you. Irene, can you come back to me?" All the starlight seemed to fall into the man's eyes. The words I waited for 10 years, spoken in the chilly midnight, were finally here. I gently closed the box, lowering my gaze and said softly, "Don't be foolish." He shook. "Joseph, we are not meant to be together in the end." Clutching the box tightly in his palm, he lowered his head, kneeling on the ground with a bewildered look. I patted his shoulder. "Please give Aunt my regards." As for the online misunderstandings, the author had already clarified them before my arrival. I had recordings of conversations with the director and character profiles I had written for this IP, which I used when meeting the author. After being turned away twice, he finally opened the door the third time. After reviewing the materials, the author agreed to release a clarification statement, with one condition: change the director. Even if he hadn't mentioned it, I would have done the same. We quickly reached an agreement and even signed an intent document for future works. I attended the birthday banquet just to hear Joseph apologize. Suddenly, there was a muffled sound behind me. I turned around to see Joseph clutching his stomach, collapsing to the ground, blood oozing through his fingers, winding its way to my feet with a knife in hand. Celine cried and laughed while standing over the man on the floor. "You never loved me. Why did you choose to be with me?" She looked up and smiled, then in agony, she clutched her belly, saying hysterically, "I loved you so much. Even when you called out someone else's name that drunken night, I tolerated it. How could you push me away today? And then turn around to propose to this woman? Joseph, how can you justify our child and me?" My heart felt like it was about to explode. Holding my breath, my knees trembling uncontrollably, I took steps back. Celine turned around, her snow-white coat splattered with blood, looking terrifying. "It's all because of you." Suddenly, the knife rushed towards me, but a figure swiftly moved in front of me, kicking away the bloody knife. Eric. Fearful for his safety, I tried to pull him away, but he stood firm like a wall, shielding me tightly behind him. Soon, others rushed in and subdued the woman on the ground. She was pregnant. I whispered quietly, "Let's go home." As I entered the house, he pressed me against the door. "Eric?" The room was dark as he leaned over my shoulder, hands tightly gripping my waist. I pushed the person on top of me, but he didn't budge. It was heavy. "I'm fine." I patted his back as if comforting a child. "I know," he muttered, not letting me see his face, "but I have something to tell you." I couldn't help but smile. "What's the matter?" "The second time. You almost lost it in front of me. Does the one by the river count? It was clearly a misunderstanding on your part. Someone couldn't reason with me and resorted to violence directly. It's getting more and more out of hand. Aunt's surgery was very successful, and no one dared to tell her about her son's near-fatal stabbing incident. Joseph stayed in the ICU for a week before finally recovering a bit, but his body was far from its former self during this time. Joseph's company's biggest competitor somehow got wind of Joseph's serious injury and hospitalization. They poached the core members of his team with high salaries. The leadership scattered, and the entire organization fell apart within weeks. All of this came from John, who came to seek refuge. Later investigations revealed that Celine was not pregnant. She had a drug addiction problem, and mental issues had been evident for a long time. She had delusions of being pregnant. After Joseph's discharge, he swiftly dealt with the company's property, dissolved what needed to be dissolved, compensated where necessary, and took his mother abroad for treatment. Before leaving, he came to see me. That day, I had just returned from watching a movie with Eric and we were debating the ending when Joseph called out to me. "I've changed my phone, you can't reach me at all," I said. He found out my address through various channels and had been waiting downstairs for a whole day. "I'm flying tomorrow." Joseph was gaunt, his eyes completely devoid of their former sparkle. He wanted a cigarette, but his hands were shaking too much. I handed him the lighter and said softly, "Have a safe journey." "Goodbye, Irene." He raised the cigarette in his hand and walked away. "Won't see you again," I said calmly. That familiar back seemed to be stabbed in place by a knife, shoulders trembling, voice choked. "Won't see you again. You must be happy." When I returned home, I found a dazzling bouquet of sunflowers lying in front of the door, bright and radiant in the dim corner. Later, I received a message from Helen. She said that her mother was gradually recovering and asked me not to worry. Not once did she mention her brother. Helen understood me. She knew that if someone left, there was no need to complicate matters. The company went through an online storm but gradually got back on track. Mary found out that Professor had been involved and felt deeply guilty for failing me, so she introduced me to a more capable director. The entire filming process went smoothly. Every day, I heard the director praising Anna heavily, eager to start a sequel immediately. Of course, I had to reward my good girlfriend properly. On the last day of filming, I invited her long-admired Louis to the set, pretending to be a crew member presenting flowers. Despite being a well-respected actress, she was usually indifferent. However, seeing Louis made her cry like a young girl. The post-production of the TV series took time, and I finally had some time off. Eric had been planning a vacation for a long time, and we finally put it on the agenda. It was March and April, and the weather in Italy was pleasant. We sat on a gondola, leisurely exploring the city of water, Venice. During Eric's study abroad, he often traveled around Europe with his classmates, and this was his second visit to Venice. On the way, he shared with me the stories of the ancient buildings on both sides of the river, the stories from the streets of Venice, and the interesting experiences during his study trip. A small boat approached us. The girl on the boat had deep and bright eyes and asked Eric if he wanted to buy a bouquet of flowers for his girlfriend. I immediately took out the change from my body and bought all the flowers from the girl. "Flowers for the beauty," I said as I handed him the flowers. He took the flowers, smiled, and then reached into the bouquet to pull out a silver ring. He carefully placed it on my finger. "The surprise I prepared was bought by you in advance," he said. He held my hand, gazing into my eyes seriously. "Let's get married." I turned the silver ring on my finger. It fit perfectly, simple yet elegant. Warmth spread through my heart. But I shook my head. "Eric, I'm not ready to get married yet." I slowly took off the ring, placed it back in his palm, and gently closed it. Looking back, I asked myself, how could I tolerate his repeated betrayals if the love was genuine? Perhaps he and I were just too accustomed to each other's presence, but marriage shouldn't be just about habit. Eric clenched the ring tightly and said in a deep voice, "I am different from him." I held his neck, cradled his face, and said softly, "Of course, you have witnessed my 3 rebirths. I have new hopes for marriage, for the beauty of growing old together. Perhaps one clear morning in the future, waking up, I might even realize that I love you. Maybe growing old slowly with this person wouldn't be a bad idea. Marriage is established by love and should not be driven by a number, an age, or a certain voice." The Bridge of Sighs is in sight. It started to rain in Venice. "When will you give me a name?" someone asked aggrievedly. His words amused me, and I chuckled. I wiped away the moisture at the corner of Eric's eyes, stood on tiptoe, and kissed his slightly cold lips. Whispered, "Like right now, I really want to take you home." A few deep, low chuckles escaped the man's throat, and he pulled me into his arms. He lowered his eyes and fiercely responded with action. "Don't just think about